Hello there, and welcome back, and thanks so much for tuning in to Ladies Can We Talk. I believe we have Lieutenant Colonel Alan West on the phone. Hello, sir.
How you doing, Debbie?
Very well. How are you?
I couldn't be any better. Just got back from Shreveport. We did a Support the Shield rally for our law enforcement officers down there in Shreveport, Bossier City.
Oh, what a great cause. I'm so glad you're able to do that. Well, we love when you're in the studio with us, but it's great having the phone too. And I guess I want to talk about two different things tonight. I wanted to start with Hillary, and I don't know if you enjoyed watching the hours of her testimony in front of the Benghazi committee, but whether you watched or enjoyed it, I don't know. But
well, I did watch it, and it was somewhat disheartening because, I think that there was only one main question that really needed to be asked in the whole thing, and that was, Madam Secretary, did you lie or were you part of a false narrative reference the nature of the terrorist attack in Benghazi? It's a yes or no. And from there, we can proceed on because we know that it was a lie that she and President Obama, Susan Rice were part of. And then you have to ask the follow-on question, well, then why was it necessary to create this false narrative, this lie? Because we need to get to the nature of what happened. And I believe that what ended up occurring in Benghazi was that 4 Americans were abandoned to die, and the Obama administration, to include Secretary then of State Hillary Clinton, were part of that. And the American people need to make the clear decision, can they trust someone such as that who abandoned Americans to die and lied about it?
you know, I thought it was interesting in her testimony. She acknowledged, well, they had emails that she written, so she really had nowhere else to go. She acknowledged that the very night of the attack, she had emailed her own daughter, Chelsea Clinton, to say that the ambassador was killed by an Al-Qaeda-like group. But even that, I just think there's something incomprehensible about the level of her ability to lie, because even faced with that, she really didn't say, okay, yeah. She said, well, but she wove in, well, the video was part of it too. I just feel like the level of her being an accomplished liar is kind of alarming. I mean, I don't even know what word to use about her.
Well, that's true, and I think that's the case, and that's why I would have suggested that that hearing would have been focused on just that issue about the integrity of the person, the character of the person, the lack of honor of a person that could simply just whisk it away and lie, and knowing that when those 4 flag-draped caskets came back and you were there at the ceremony, the things that you said to the families that you were going to bring the video producer to justice, and how we spent millions of dollars in commercial advertisements to Muslim countries to apologize. That's what she did. None of that was necessary because it was a terrorist attack. And again, Debbie, the question we have to ask ourselves, is this the person that we want to have as President of the United States of America and Commander-in-Chief? I know all the other things about the relationship with Sidney Blumenthal and talking points or what have you, but the most important thing is about, her part in the false narrative that was created. And then you have to ask yourself, why did they lie about it? Why did we have a CIA annex in Benghazi, Libya?
Exactly. Yes. I had on the show, I think just last week or perhaps 2 weeks ago, one of the people who was at the security annex, Chris. He goes by Tonto Peranto, but he was one of the security guys there who just, listening to him, and I read his book and I had him on the show. They wrote the book because they felt like they watched their own government lie about so much of that night, and he and they really want the American people to know the truth. And I'm thrilled the movie's going to come out. It's going to be coming out in January, 13 hours. But here's my kind of political question. So what is your gut level thought? Do you think that Hillary's testimony in front of the Benghazi committee did change any hearts and minds among American voters?
I really don't think it moved the needle that much. I mean, if you love Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, you're going to continue to love her. And you saw her just go right out at the Jefferson Jackson dinner, I believe, in Iowa, and act like, nothing happened, no big deal. You saw her reaction at the end of the 11-hour hearing, and how she threw up her hands and made this smiley face when the family members that were in that hearing room had to be dejected. So, and if you felt that Hillary is not a trustworthy person, she's still not a trustworthy person. But I believe that by the time you get around into 2016, And when you start to really focus on her and her record as Secretary of State, her record as a U.S. Senator, you will start to see that it's not built on any type of accomplishments. And if anything, it's just a series of failures to include this Russian reset button. So I think that, for those who are political animals, junkies right now, we're watching this in October. But the greater American population will start paying attention more so to this next year in 2016, and they will start to ask the questions. And this movie coming out next January is really going to be something that that'll be interesting to see, because everything is through the prism of the entertainment industry in this country.
I agree. And, I had the thought listening really in the middle of watching Hillary that there would be people, especially feminist types, who'd be looking at her and thinking, gosh, she's one woman and she's so amazingly accomplished. She's been a first lady and a senator and a secretary of state, and she's just being, it's a political witch hunt, and she's being hassled. And I was almost thinking, my gosh, I wish we could just get the hearing over with, because she's going to emerge as a victim. But the more I thought about it, I like the record was created by the truth seekers. And regardless of the efforts to paint that committee as just a political witch hunt, they are seeking truth. And I think that record is really for all time going to be important for Americans to be able to go back to and look at, for historians to look at. And as you say, we're speaking by Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, as you say, really people early in the next year tuning in for the first time might go read that and say, wow, I didn't realize all this.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, you combine some of the sound bites from her, some of the facial expressions. You go back and remember what difference at this point does it make. And everyone can talk about, Hillary Clinton was harassed and it was a witch hunt. 4 people are dead. Okay, there is no harassment for them. They're dead. And to understand how those 2 former Navy SEALs, Ty Woods and Glenn Doherty, died on that rooftop with incoming mortar fire, people don't come to a spontaneous demonstration with AK-47s, RPGs, and mortars. So, the American people this is not over, and they'll get another opportunity to hear this story. And hopefully that they will hear this story and ask themselves, do I want my son or my daughter to be in the United States military with someone that allowed this to happen?
I love that point. And the other thought related to that is, I think even though candidates on the GOP side are unlikely to spend a lot of campaign money taking quotes out of her testimony, I think there'll be PACs and other organizations that work to educate or inform the American public who can get quite a few important sound bites out. That one you alluded to in her previous testimony about what difference does it make, and then from this one that just will help. I think when you're a political junkie, you kind of see the world, you kind of think, well, the conservative side and the liberal side and everyone's set, but there are just millions of Americans who really are good-hearted. They want to do the right thing, and this may be a source of information about them, for them, about her, to really cause them to think, you know what, I'm not sure I can trust her. I hope that's the outcome. We're actually go ahead.
Okay, go ahead. No, I'm sorry.
No, I want you to go ahead.
Well, the bottom line is Vladimir Putin is not looking at Republicans or Democrats. What he is doing is aimed at the United States of America. The mortars that came in on that rooftop on Libya and Benghazi was not looking at Republicans or Democrats. It was, aimed toward Americans. And we have to have someone that is not going to be so politicized in her decision-making, but she's going to take into account what Americans are facing out there in harm's way. And when you look at it through that prism, I don't see how anyone could support former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton as the next president of the United States of America.
I agree. We're speaking with Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, and we're at our bottom of the hour break where we just need to zip off to a few commercials, but I believe you are able to hang on for one more segment, right?
That is correct, Debbie.
Great. Okay. when we come back, we're going to talk about a piece. I actually emailed Alan a couple weeks ago about this, that this title of Alan West's article is President Obama, 1938 Called and Wants His Foreign Policy Back. I thought it was actually brilliant, and the analogies made were stellar. And I want to talk a little bit about completely different subject, or a related subject maybe, is what's happening in the world and America's place in it. So hang on through the break. This is Debbie Georgatos, and Ladies Can We Talk on 660 AM The Answer. Come on right back after our break.
Back to Ladies Can We Talk with Debbie Georgatos on 660 AM The Answer.
Welcome back to Ladies Can We Talk. I won't do a long spiel about it right now, but we got new music on this show, and it just is so much like the message of this show, and I hope you're enjoying it. It's really great. The artist is Krista Branch, and it's wonderful. So we were talking with Lieutenant Colonel Alan West, and we great time talking just a few minutes about Hillary Clinton and her testimony before the Benghazi Committee and what it really will mean to America politically. But I want to change the subject and talk about, Lieutenant Colonel, I know you've served the country, you have served in the Army for a long period of time, you served in the Congress, and anyone in this audience who's heard you speak knows that you are just a student, really, of military history, the geopolitics in all over the world, but certainly with respect to the Middle East and the competing factions right now that are causing so much destruction and death, or not just ISIS, but countries that are involved in all sorts of. You're just an expert in that stuff, and so I really want to have you share with our listeners this idea you were talking about in your article, which was, I mentioned before the break, called President Obama, 1938, called and wants his foreign policy back. I will post a link to this on the Ladies Can We Talk Facebook page. But you're basically saying we're in a very dangerous spot in the world right now, kind of similar to prior to World War II, where bad powers are building up. Could you tell us all about that?
Well, sure. And the title of that piece came from, if you remember, back in 2012, when Governor Mitt Romney was asked who did he think was America's biggest geopolitical threat, and he said Russia. And President Obama replied with his, snarky way and manner that the 1980s are calling for its foreign policy back. Well,
Yep.
Guess what? Here, look at where we are today with Russia and all they're doing. And so when I look at what happened between 1936 and 39, you had the great Western powers who were doing everything to avoid any type of escalation or confrontation with a resurging Germany, who had heavily invested in its economy, rebuilding its war machine. As a matter of fact, some of the new articles of the Nazi war machinery was being used in the Spanish Civil War. And then, of course, we saw that Adolf Hitler went and took over the industrial Rhineland. Not a shot was fired, and that really surprised the German generals. They annexed Austria. They demanded for the Sudetenland because they wanted to protect ethnic Germans. It was given to them. And then the next thing you know, they attacked Czechoslovakia and took it. And that came the 1938 Munich Accord, signed between Neville Chamberlain and Adolf Hitler. And, of course, the famed words, there will be peace in our time. Well, if you fast forward to today, you see an American president, Barack Obama, who tries to avoid any type of escalation and confrontation. And these powers that are out there, such as Russia, Vladimir Putin, China, Xi Jinping, and Iran, Hassan Rouhani, and the Ayatollah Khamenei, they recognize that, and they're continuing to push. And no different than the Munich Accord in 1938, you have the Joint Comprehensive Plan of Action, which is the Iranian nuclear agreement. And remember that Adolf Hitler continued on, and he invaded Poland with the blitzkrieg tactics that he had practiced and refined during the Spanish Civil War in support of Generalissimo Franco. And when he was asked about this accord that they signed, he said it's just a piece of paper. And I think that's the exact same way that the Iranians see this accord that we've signed with them. They've tested ballistic missiles. They have shown us videos of their underground missile base. Their Quds force is now fighting alongside Hezbollah under Russian air cover in Syria. Xi Jinping and China has built these archipelagos, man-made archipelagos, put military fortifications on it along a route where 35 to 40% of the sea lanes of commerce transit. So back then in 36 to 39, the powers that were growing were were Germany, Japan, and Italy. Today we see Russia, Iran, and China. So that's why I say 1938 is calling for its foreign policy back, Mr. Obama.
That was fabulous summary, and I appreciate that so much. I did reread it again today, and I read a longer, very long piece in the Wall Street Journal that was by Henry Kissinger, A Path Out of the Middle East Collapse. And, part of what I wanted to talk with you about. I mean, this is a fabulous diagnosis of where we are, but one reason we are there, where we are in the world, is that we have a leadership in America, a presidency and a whole administration that does not really think America has a special place in the world, that doesn't think it's exceptional, and doesn't think that America should be a leader and a standard bearer for liberty or standard bearer for what's right. That we have, and so. And I will tell you that I was at a talk recently by a congressman, actually, a very small group, and he was running through how bad things are in the Middle East. And one of the questions he got from the audience was essentially, given how bad things are and how much Obama and the Democrats have capitulated and allowed the situation to become out of control, allow the Russians to move into Syria and do what they're doing, is the best answer for America just to withdraw, stay home, and let them fight out over there without us? And so I was curious what your reaction is to that question.
Well, that's not an option. That's not a viable option. If you want a United States of America that's irrelevant, if you want an America that, will have no allies to trust them and embolden enemies, then okay, follow along with that. Right now we see the Sykes-Picot Treaty of post-World War I falling apart, the remaking of the Middle East. But who is there to try to usher in a new Middle East? It's Russia and Iran becoming the dominant players there. I don't think that the United States of America has to seek to be the world's policeman, but the United States of America has to have peace through strength and show that we are a key player in foreign policy and show that we can be a power and strength and might and deterring the actions of some of these adversaries and this new axis that we see developing. What do you say to Egypt? What do you say to Israel? What do you say to the Kurds? What do you say to the United Arab Emirates? And to Jordan? These people who are seeking us as a willing ally. You're just going to abandon them. I guess it's just the same as you abandon the 4 Americans to die
Yes.
in Benghazi. It is no different. And I believe that's the wrong message that you want our allies to see. So then, as the world begins to shrink around you, how can you be a better player in these global events? You're not going to be, and no different from what's happening out there in the Pacific, where South Korea and Taiwan and Vietnam and the Philippines and others, they don't see America as a trusted ally. Japan is looking at changing from a self-defense force to a full-up military. They're going to change their constitution. And why? Because they can't trust America.
I'm so glad you ran through all that. And I'm 1,000% with you on that I'm just deeply disheartened and concerned about where America stands in the world's eyes now. It is the bad guys in the world feel emboldened. They don't think there's any threat from America. And I sense in that question I mentioned to you about, should we just abandon things and go home? We are in a bad place because of 6 years plus of decision making that isn't willing to just take a strong stand for demanding that the bad guys back down, that we stand strong with our allies, that our allies know we're with them, and that our enemies know we will fight. So given where we are now and the mess created in Syria and with ISIS on the march and the extreme hegemonic goals of Iran, who's now feeling emboldened by us. In fact, I think actually I'll ask you this question. Don't you think the world looked at the Iranian deal we made and thought, oh, America's probably okay with expanding Iranian control over that part of the world? I mean, is that the message we sent?
Oh, absolutely. That's the message we sent. And we told the Sunni allies in the region that they're going to have to fend for themselves. So you are going to create a nuclear arms race. And chances are, Iran is not going to stop spending centrifuges. We don't have any means by which we can dispatch inspectors. As a matter of fact, Iran has said we're not going to allow any American inspectors. So when you have a president that, flat out, he blocked the ability for this resolution for disapproval to even come up to vote on the Senate floor. Yep. You had 42 Democrats that filibustered it. So the American people have just been told, this is what I want. I don't care about your voice out there through your representatives in the Senate. This is going to go through, and it's going to be a fait accompli. And what message does that send to all the despots, dictators, theocrats, and autocrats? And again, people say that we should just withdraw back and not be engaged or whatever. That's the exact same thing that happened back in 1936 to 39. And then by 1941, guess what ended up happening? A catastrophic event that drew us into this because we tried to sit it out and not pay attention and not want to be a part of these events that were happening all around us. We have Islamic terrorist cells that are in this country that are operating and just waiting for the green light. So we cannot withdraw from the world. Not saying that we have to go out and police it, but we should be able to go out and find the bad guys and kill the bad guys.
You know, you went to the exact question. I was going to loop back also to the point of your article about the idea of this being 1938. I think if the world could, go back in time and have stopped Hitler much earlier, I don't think you'd find anyone really on any side of the battle would think, oh, it was a great thing that we had to go through the torture of World War II. We would have, if you could go back in time, you would change the reaction. You would respond more strongly to Hitler back then. And I think the same thing is, I love your article making the point and alerting Americans to, we can't let this axis of power grow among the despots of the world, the tyrants, the bullies, the aggressors, because we will face another situation. And frankly, worse, because back then there were far fewer players who had nuclear weapons. But at this point, so many players have nuclear weapons. The idea of not stopping and taking aggressive action to stop many of the bad actors in the world could have such a larger consequence. I mean, and just catastrophically larger consequences than World War II.
No, you're absolutely right. If the great Western powers had pushed back against Adolf Hitler when he sought to take the industrial Rhineland, probably this would not have gone anywhere. If the great Western powers had not allowed Adolf Hitler to test his new war machine tools in the Spanish Civil War, it would not have gone anywhere. My concern, Debbie, is that we still have about 15 to 16 months under this administration. These, the Russias, the China, Iran, North Korea, the Islamic terrorists, they're going to continue to push this thing. And I don't know where the world will be come January of 2017, but it's going to be in a very bad place.
We're speaking tonight, and we are wrapping up our interview with Lieutenant Colonel Alan West. Sir, thank you so much for calling in.
My pleasure. It's always a pleasure to be with you. I'm sorry I couldn't be in studio with you, but I will be next time.
I hope so. I'm glad to hear that. Okay, this is Debbie Georgatos, and ladies, can we talk on 660 AM The Answer?